So I've got 6 pieces of pork loin steak, and what I'm doing is I put it between 2 pieces of baking paper, and then using my really heavy cast iron fry pan, I just bang it down as hard as I can, or well, almost as hard as I can, until the meat flattens and I end up with thinner pieces of steak. You can totally just buy schnitzels already flattened, or if you've got a meat mallet, that works even better and easier, but this worked good. So I bang away, let out some aggression, and then put the meat on a plate. And to be honest, you want a little bit of thickness to this. You don't want it too thin. Then I take some mozzarella cheese and I just slice thinnish slices, enough to cover 3 of the pieces of meat. So I set that aside. Then I take 3 of the pork loin pieces and I put them on a board. And then I put about a teaspoon or so of Dijon mustard all over the piece of pork. You can use any mustard, but I really like Dijon. And then I've got some shaved ham and I just layer that all over the mustard, covering all the pork slices. You can also just use a thick slice of ham. Then I get the mozzarella and cover the ham with the mozzarella. So I'm sort of making a raw pork sandwich here. Now, you can totally use fresh sage, but dried sage works just as well. So I sprinkle a little bit of dried sage all over the cheese, and it adds such a lovely flavour to the dish. Then I put the other pieces of steak on top and make a sandwich. Now I prepare my flour, eggs and breadcrumbs. So I just tip some flour into a bowl. Then I break about 3 eggs and I give that a good little whisk with a fork. Then I get a plate and I tip some breadcrumbs onto a plate, and that's all the ingredients I need to bread the pork. I sprinkle some salt and pepper on both sides of the pork sandwiches and rub it in and make sure they're seasoned well on both sides. And then I start breading the pork sandwiches. First I put it into flour and lightly dust it with flour and pat the excess off. And then I generously make sure all the pork and the sides and the bottom and the top are covered with the egg mixture. And then into the breadcrumbs, and I press all the breadcrumbs on, even the sides. I try and get some breadcrumbs on the sides. And then I set that aside. And I do the same for the other 2 pork sandwiches, and I end up with 3 big pork sandwiches. So I put them in the fridge now for about half an hour or so, just so they firm up a little bit and they'll be easier to fry. After about half an hour, I get a fry pan and I put some oil in, enough to cover the bottom, and a little bit of butter. The butter is for flavour, and also I think it helps stop the pork from spitting so much. Now I could only fit 2 sandwiches in this fry pan, and that's actually enough for dinner tonight for Mike and I. I'll keep the other one for him tomorrow night. And I cook it for 6 minutes on the first side over really low heat actually, just so it keeps bubbling away. After 6 minutes I turn it over and it's starting to get some beautiful golden colour. I cook it for another 6 minutes now on the other side. So today I'm going to serve it with some buttered noodles and a little bit of salad. So while the pork is cooking, I take a pot and I bring it to the boil, salt it generously, put my spaghetti in, and once they're al dente, I drain the pasta water, and then I add a generous knob of butter and give that a good stir, and then about a half a cup of parsley, fresh parsley. Now you don't have to serve the Double Decker Pork Schnitzels with buttered noodles, but this is just what we had tonight, and it actually was really delicious. So I give that a good little stir, I put the lid on and I set that aside. So after the pork has been cooking for the 6 minutes on the second side, I turn it over and I'm going to give them 3 more minutes on each side. The cheese is starting to ooze and the colour is amazing. So 3 minutes on that side, I'll turn it over, and then 3 minutes on the next side. So after that 3 minutes is expired, so it's 9 minutes on each side, I take the pork sandwiches out and it's time to serve up. I slice the first one in half and you can see that it was cooked perfectly. It was moist and juicy and the cheese melted, and the pink bit is the ham. I take the second bit out and I cut into that. It was super hot, so I actually had to get my egg slider to be able to turn it around. And then I cut the second half and it was perfectly cooked. So plating up time. I put some butter noodles on the plate and I made a quick little salad. It's just cucumber, tomato, lettuce with a little bit of apple cider vinegar and a little bit of oil. Now Mike's going to have a whole one and I have a half of the big one. It was super delicious. It was so yum and so easy actually. Such a wonderful combination. Thanks so much for joining me. Oh, I topped it off with a little bit of parsley because I had some left over from the buttered noodles. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you make this because it's really, really good. See you next time.